Good evening and thanks for joining us. I am Nashay Taylor. Moorhead police have released there were lethal amounts of carbon monoxide found in the 7 people who died at a family home in Moorhead this past weekend. Valley News Team's Alex Larson has more on the silent killer and what police have found in their investigation so far.
People typically don't know carbon monoxide is in their home until they have symptoms. This can result in a majority of people dying in their sleep from exposure. All ages can be at risk.
The victims were found all in their beds, excluding 2, which would be like the mother and father, which were in the bedroom area.
The 2 possible contributors to the family on Saturday were a van in the garage and the furnace. Further work needs to be done by a separate lab to see if there's any hydrogen cyanide, which comes from a vehicle's exhaust.
If this is not present, this leaves the furnace. This lab test may take up to 8 weeks before we have any results.
With high amounts of CO, it can take just 5 minutes to be deadly. People may mistake their symptoms for the beginning of a cold or the flu.
That if you start to get that lightheaded, nauseous, dizzy, anything like that, to call and they'll come out with their equipment and test it for you.
No issues were found with detectors during the last building inspection of the Moorhead home in September of last year. But upon investigating, the carbon monoxide sensor was found to not be working.
Detectives did find a carbon monoxide detector detached from the wall and placed in a laundry room cabinet with a battery removed.
Moorhead Fire recommends replacing your carbon monoxide detector every 7 years, while also testing it and replacing the batteries every 6 months.
The only test that can truly be done with a carbon monoxide detector is pressing and activating the button, which will simulate a high CO alarm level and see if the detector will sound at that. There isn't really a good independent test that residents can do of their detectors.
Residential properties in North Dakota and Minnesota require carbon monoxide detectors.
This is a fairly new construction, and a carbon monoxide detector was required by code within 10 feet of the bedrooms.
Alex Larson, Valley News Live.
And basic carbon monoxide detectors are just over $20 at area hardware stores. And in similar news, 2 people were rushed to the hospital this morning after dangerously high levels of carbon monoxide were found in a South Fargo apartment complex coming from the building's boiler room.
We opened their mechanical room and we were getting readings over 1,600 parts per million, which is almost very bad, fatal.
Crews say they were called just after 11 this morning to the 4700 block of 46th Street South for a welfare check. Fargo police say a person was found unresponsive in their apartment and was taken to the emergency room along with another tenant in the unit above. Fire officials say both victims' units were directly above the boiler room. Their conditions remain unknown at this time. And just a few days before the holiday, and it's already a white Christmas outside. Hutch Johnson is here now with our forecast. Hutch.
Nashay, thanks so much and good evening, everyone. We do have some flakes flying. They've hit the Grand Forks area. You can see in the light of our sky cam here at the Home of Economy location that there's some snowflakes drifting through it, and it is putting a light coating of slippery on area roads there in Grand Forks. And the heavier batch of snow is actually showing up on the radar just a little bit north of the Highway 2 corridor. Look at Cavalier, for instance. Those flakes really flying out there on that Department of Transportation camera. Here's the batch moving into Grand Forks, western Polk County and Marshall counties as well. That extends all the way back toward the Devil's Lake Basin. Now, as we look at this, the darker blue stuff is just north of Grand Forks, so it's very light in town. But you get north as you head up towards Oslo and Drayton, it might be a little heavier still. And the heaviest is making its way right along that highway, 5 corridor way up in the north. And that's where we find the lowest visibilities, at times under 2 miles. Right now it's under 2 miles in Grand Forks, 2.5 miles in the Grafton area, and Rolla reporting 2 miles of visibility. Here's a look at Emerado. Those flakes are a little bigger there, but we could still see the road surface. Expect 1 to 3 mainly north of the Highway 2 corridor. Along Highway 2, I expect we'll have a dusting to 1/2 inch. We have some big time weather to talk about. First alert weather days for a storm system on Saturday that will impact some of our area. Another system Sunday into Monday. Nashay will have details on all of that and our first Arctic air mass of the season coming our way. Details in a moment.
Sounds chilly. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. One person is dead after a house fire in Frazee, Minnesota. Emergency crews were called just after 2 a.m. in rural Rochard. The sheriff's office says when first responders arrived, the structure had already collapsed. The person who died was found in the rubble. Their name has not been released. Investigators are still trying to determine a cause of that fire. 2 men are seriously hurt after officials say a train slammed into their SUV. The accident happened yesterday at the railroad crossing of Pikewood Lane and County Highway 80. The crash report says Jonathan Shaw was driving an SUV when he crossed the tracks and got hit by the train. He and his passenger, Travis Mate, were taken to the hospital with significant injuries. And the Clay County Sheriff's Office says someone has been calling people identifying themselves as a deputy. The person is telling those on the other line to send money, or 2 deputies would be sent to the scam victim's home. The phone number they are calling from is 218-203-8063. If you get a call from this number, do not answer or attempt to call back. Both Fargo and West Fargo police departments are urging businesses to remember to take precautions to prevent burglaries this holiday season. Authorities say there have been a recent trend of burglaries in the metro region, and many of those burglaries involve suspects entering a business and taking merchandise. Police recommends businesses consider adding security cameras, alarm systems, and installing floodlights near the entrances and exits. Also, try to reduce the amount of cash and valuables left on hand after hours. All True Hospital in Grand Forks announced today that the new hospital coming to town is near completion. All True's new hospital design includes 7 floors, space for 226 licensed patient beds, a 16-bed observation unit with a focus on innovation, technology, and a healing environment. It is slated to open in 2024. With Christmas just 3 days away, the Omicron variant is increasing concern and causing some confusion nationwide. Here's more.
COVID cases surging yet again. The Omicron variant spreading rapidly nationwide. The Department of Health and Human Services reports hospitalizations are rising steadily.
Things are moving quickly, right? So about a week ago, we reported that we had about 3% of our sequences now representing Omicron. And now this week, we're reporting up to 73%.
Now Americans are scrambling, waiting in long lines to get tested. President Biden announced his plan to distribute 500 million testing kits nationwide in January. But some cities are pushing for tests immediately.
We really need those at-home tests. It's a problem we don't have them. And I think the president should take the Defense Production Act and take it to the maximum, because we're going to need billions over the next few months.
Public health officials say if you're fully vaccinated and boosted, you are much more protected heading into this holiday season. But it's also important to take safety measures before you travel. In the wake of the spike in cases, some cities are canceling or reconsidering New Year's Eve celebrations. The NHL is pausing its season, the NBA postponing games, and some shows on Broadway are shutting down temporarily.
We are not telling people to hide or hunker down or surrender to this situation. We're telling people to be smart. If you're not feeling well, stay home for sure.
I'm Daryl Forges reporting.
And with the Omicron variant being identified in all 50 states, the latest wave is testing the economic recovery. Congress has already authorized nearly $6 trillion in emergency funds since the pandemic started. Most of it went toward fighting COVID-19, helping out small businesses and families, as well as bailing out the airline industry. But now there's hardly any money left. About 86% of the government's funds have already been distributed or committed. One economist says it's too soon to know whether Washington needs to provide more relief, but they should be prepared in case Omicron starts meddling with the economic recovery. Later on Valley News Live at 10, the gift of giving from an 8-year-old homeless girl.
And tonight we have flakes flying mainly up north. A live look from Grand Forks showing we're starting to get a light coating on area streets. Here it is on the radar. We'll have an update on this system, how much you can expect by morning, and first alert weather days for the holiday weekend. The latest models are just rolling in. I'll tell you all about it. Join me. Weather's next.